In the run-up to Budget 2024, the government faces some tough challenges. Bringing down inflation to RBI's threshold of 4% from the elevated 5% levels as of now. Addressing unemployment both in urban as well as rural areas, and reducing fiscal deficit, or the difference between the government's expenses and revenues, to 5.1% of the GDP. And all this while keeping the Indian economy on the 8% growth glide path. So, what can the government do in this budget to address the above, and does Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman have an ace up her bahikhata that can ease the tax burden on the middle class? Well, perhaps she could, and I'll tell you how. But first, let's see how the budget can address some pressing issues at hand. Inflation stemming out of rising food prices is a supply-side issue. In a monsoon-reliant agriculture sector, it is tough for the fiscal policy to influence food prices. Instead, what the government can do is that it can put more money in the hands of farmers to supplement their income. Remember, the very first economic decision that Prime Minister Modi took after resuming office last month was the rollout of the 17th installment of PM Kisan, amounting to 20,000 crore rupees. PM Kisan is likely to see a further uptick in the upcoming budget, along with more incentives for the farm sector, like an increase in outlay for irrigation projects and fertilizer subsidies. Next, the question of employment. The government is clear that rural unemployment can be checked by moving the youth away from the farms and into factories. Manufacturing is a focus area, and there is a geopolitical advantage India has with Western tariffs on China's low-cost products. The budget should revise tariff on electronics component imports, especially for smartphone manufacturing, making components like circuit boards price competitive when compared to both China as well as the emerging threat from Vietnam. At the same time, the government will have to offer lower corporate tax to new manufacturing investments, like it had intended to do with EV factories. Now, on the urban unemployment front, well, greater push on ease of doing business coupled with policy interventions like IT parks and tax sops for global capacity centers or global capability centers should be on the anvil. Educated youth of India should get a chance to find a white-collar job closer home and get included in the tax net as well. Add to that, skilling for semiconductor design and AI-driven tech solutions should see greater push in the union budget. Now, for the GDP glide path to stay firm at about 8% growth, the government will continue investing in infrastructure. The already allocated 11.11 lakh crore rupees could see another top-up, and schemes like PLI, a firm policy on electric, hybrid as well as flex fuel vehicles, could see more investments by the private sector, all together aiding the GDP story. And finally, the fiscal deficit target. Well, now let's come to the elephant in the room. The government's main source of revenue is tax. Individuals, corporations, stamp duty, capital gains, as well as indirect taxes like GST. For the government to continue spending on the farm sector and infrastructure development while keeping the fiscal deficit in the narrow lane, it will need money. And that money comes from the taxes we pay on pretty much everything. But this time, there are two big opportunities that the government can clinch to provide some relief to the taxpayer. First, RBI's dividend bonanza of 2.1 lakh crore rupees. And next, India's inclusion in global emerging market bond indices, both JP Morgan, where India got included on 28th of June, and the upcoming Bloomberg bond index. Passive inflow of funds into government securities to the tune of another $25 billion, or approximately another 2.1 lakh crore rupees, means that the government can plan to offset the burden on taxpayers by almost 4.2 lakh crore rupees. Give or take, that's almost 3 months' worth of GST collection. So can the government cut taxes? It makes sense for the government to propel the consumption story further and add to the profitability of the industry as well as the GDP growth. But can is another story. Will Finance Minister do it? Well, that's something we'll have to find an answer to only on July 24th, when the budget is likely to be tabled in Parliament.